Hi, I'm Brendan, the Technology Concierge. Today I'm joined by Daryl Brett from Vintech, and we're talking about all things minibar. Hey, Daryl, welcome.
Good morning, or is it good afternoon?
And I think it's just gone afternoon, so it's all good. Daryl, probably if you can start off just by telling us briefly what Vintech does.
Okay, Vintech Systems, effectively we're a distributor. We distribute 4 or 5 key brands within the hospitality industry. There'll be Minibars, which is obviously what we're going to be talking about as this technology discussion. We also do a range of safes from SafeMark, locks from Dormakaba SafLock, and integral guest room management systems and energy management systems. So any technology that goes into the room is really where we can partner with a hotel or a developer and pull together all the products that really need to work together. So there's a single point of control and a single point of discussion, rather than a hospitality hotel developer having to work with multiple vendors. They can sort of package it all up into a single vendor. So we have a range of expertise trying to support these products into the hotel industry.
That's perfect. Okay. So it's in-room technology, basically. Today we're going to be talking about minibars. Now, obviously, they've been around for a long time. There are a couple of different types of fridges. Now, to be honest, I don't know the differences, the pros and cons between them. I do know that some are quieter than others. Can you give us a rundown on the different types of fridges that are available and what's good and bad?
First of all, I'm going to correct you slightly in terminology. A fridge is not a minibar. Normally, when you talk about a fridge, you're talking about a domestic appliance, and fridges normally have a freezer component to them. Okay. Minibars don't have freezers, so they are designed specifically for the hotel room to keep a number of different products at a comfortable temperature or a cool temperature. So there are 2 technologies really. There's absorption and there's compressor. They both work the same way in as much as they take a liquid, convert it into a gas, and as it converts back from a gas to a liquid, it sucks heat out of the minibar itself. Now, absorption has no moving parts. So the actual fluids that are in there, and mainly ammonia and water, are heated up. As they're heated up, they convert it into a gas. And then as the gas passes through the diffuser, it converts itself back into a liquid and draws the heat out of the minibar.
Sounds good.
A compressor uses a liquid that it compresses, it actively compresses it down, which changes its state into a vapor. And then as it expands through the diffuser, it goes back into a fluid, drawing the heat out of the minibar. So they both do the same thing, cooling a box. It's just how they go about it.
Yeah.
Now, there are pros and cons to both. The absorption minibar seems to be the more popular in the industry, or in the hospitality industry at least. And the main argument behind going for absorption is there are no moving parts, so there is no noise, so it is 100% silent. The downside to that is, A, the gases and liquids that it uses aren't particularly good for the environment and aren't particularly good for people. So ammonia is not a good thing to be having in a guest room. The second thing is to actually get the ammonia into a gas and back again, it needs to be heated. So you have a very large heat load to the minibar. So you need very good ventilation. And where is that heat going? That heat's going into the room, so therefore you need to have the air conditioning running to fight the minibar. So on top of all of that, you've got the electricity use. Obviously you're heating something to cool something else, and then you're cooling something else to get rid of the heat that's in the room.
Yep.
They're not very efficient, but they are whisper quiet, which is really where they have a space in the market. Now, compressor technology.
Awesome fridge. I mean, how long do they normally last for?
It does depend on use, and it does depend on how the room's kept and the ventilation. Where they create a lot of heat, they also create a lot of condensation. So you tend to find an absorption minibar, if it's not installed very well, hasn't got very good ventilation, it actually corrodes at the back. And you would normally say 2 to 5 years.
Yep.
is the sort of average you'll get for an absorption minibar, unless it's really well installed, or it's very, very accurately put into the enclosure that it's put into. When you start talking about compressor minibars, you're normally 50% longer, so you're between 5 and 10 years. They haven't got the same heat load, and the only thing that really goes wrong with them is the bearings in the motor wear out, and that's again where the noise factor comes in. So what I normally suggest to people that are looking at this, that yes, if you want a quick, relatively cheap fix, go for an absorption minibar.
Yep.
But be prepared, in 2 to 5 years you're going to have to reinvest. If you go for a good quality compressor minibar, then that noise factor is reduced considerably and will last much, much longer. And actually, some of the minibars out there now have an internal timer, so you can set them to turn off between the hours of 11 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. So when the guest is asleep in the room, they are 100% whisper quiet again, because they're physically not on. So that's really where we are with technology as to the two different types. Sorry, Brendan.
I was going to say, I suppose from a price point of view, are absorption minibars generally a little bit cheaper than compressor, or the price is the same? It's just, as you said, with the compressor, you're probably going to get double the life out of the unit. So
yeah, you can buy compressor minibars at the same cost as absorption minibars, but you're then buying a cheaper compressor, or you're buying a minibar that hasn't got a good seal on it, or it hasn't got a thermoplate at the back, so it doesn't hold the temperature as well. See, a compressor minibar comes on, cools very quickly, and then turns off. So that's why if you're at home, you'll hear your home refrigeration unit coming on, it rattles, and then goes quiet, then half an hour later it rattles again. Effectively, it's turning on and off to keep the temperature cool.
Yep.
Absorption minibars, what they tend to do is they run continuously. They're not actually thermostatically controlled.
Right.
They just have this continual process of trying to cool the box down. So you may have noticed this, that if you ever stayed in a hotel with an absorption minibar, you open the minibar and you spend 5 minutes rummaging around, choosing what you want. What happens is the temperature rises up, so effectively the cold air falls out. And it then takes a good 2 or 3 hours to get that minibar back to a cold temperature, which is why absorption minibars aren't really suitable for milk or dairy products, because the temperature fluctuates up and down so much. The moment you look at a compressor minibar, you set the temperature to low, i.e. your average hotel 3 to 4 degrees, which is where most products like to sit. Yep. It will physically work to get to that temperature, and will do it much quicker. So going back to your question, you can buy cheap compressor minibars at the same cost as an absorption minibar, but it's going to be noisy and it's not going to be as efficient. If you pay the extra money for a good quality compressor minibar and you do your investigations of what makes the difference, then that extra 20–30%, if that, will be more than covered in the life expectancy of the unit, the energy consumption of the unit, and the guest satisfaction of the unit.
Yeah, so it's a matter of looking at the total cost of ownership. And I presume if somebody wanted to do that, you've probably got some sort of numbers or calculations that they could run. As you said, energy consumption is a big one these days, and then the life of the unit, of course.
Yeah, look, there are industry standards with regard to consumption. And if you go into the Good Guys or Bingley or anything like that, looking at a fridge, you'll see, a star rating as to how energy efficient it is. Exactly the same applies to minibars. So any vendor you go to should be able to supply you its energy efficiency, its star rating. From that, it's then just a simple comparison as to what your running costs are and how often you want to have the capital expenditure of replacing the minibar units. Unfortunately, absorption minibars are now getting the reputation of being a consumable almost.
Right.
It's expected that you install it and 2 to 3 years later you're going to replace it and throw it away, which is absolutely atrocious to the environment.
Yep.
It's also a really inconvenience to the, obviously, the maintenance and the operation of the hotel, because they've got to physically move these boxes in and out of the rooms.
Yep.
All for a short-term saving.
And there's probably a disposal cost, I would assume, because of the fact that, you know, there's ammonia in it. Nobody really wants it. So you're actually paying to have it actually removed and disposed of, which, you know, I'm in a lot of areas starting to become really expensive. So any cost that you've saved is probably eaten up by that disposal cost.
As you know, Brendan, it unfortunately tends to come out of different budgets within the hotels.
True.
Springs, so it may get lost in the equation.
It's true.
But yes, it is. It's, you know, Vintech, we're always trying to be environmentally friendly in the products that we're putting into the market and how they work. So we've got energy management products, we've got various other things. And it is always painful when I know that if we're selling an absorption minibar on cost, that in 2 to 5 years, it's going to end up in landfill, or it's going to end up being, you know, paid to be disposed of. I know compressor minibars do have a shelf life themselves, and they will need to be replaced as well. But they, as long as you get a good compressor minibar, one of the main manufacturers of the actual compressor is Danfoss. So if you can find a minibar that's got a Danfoss compressor into it, you know that you've got something that's going to last longer than your off-the-shelf, relatively cheap OEM model.
Yep. Okay. No, that's excellent advice. Daryl, before we started, we actually had a chat about the history of minibars, which I thought it was interesting. Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about the background behind minibars, and I suppose, yeah.
Okay. So the history of the minibar is, if you do the research, they say that there was the Hilton in Hong Kong had the first minibar in 1974 or around that era. I'm not sure how accurate the information is, but that's what tends to be the industry comment.
Okay.
And at the time, it was deemed to be a wonderful thing that you could put all this product in the minibar, and when the guests stayed, they could help themselves, and all of a sudden you have this additional revenue stream. So there are two elements. There's the revenue stream for the food and beverages, and there is the guest satisfaction. Now, the guest satisfaction always normally comes down to an impulse buy. You don't normally check into a hotel specifically to go and buy something from the minibar. You check into that hotel to have a good time, to go with friends, family, workmates, etc.
Yep.
And what tends to happen in my experience, which is probably a bad reference point, but you get back to the hotel late at night and you're lying there and you think, well, just before I go to sleep, I wouldn't mind a bar of chocolate, or I wouldn't mind a cold drink, or I wouldn't mind another shot. And that's really where, when you've got a minibar there that's visible and stocked, that you're going to get your impulse buy.
Yep.
What you need to be careful, or what we find needs to be thought about with the food and beverages side teams that we work with, is that if you try and put really good quality products into your minibar, so the Dom Perignons of this world, or some really fancy stuff,
yep,
it's really nice for the hotel general manager to go, look, I've got this wonderful product in my minibar, but the cost of the product is at a point where you start getting wastage. Now, wastage, I mean, either the guest consumes it, checks out, and at which point in time you can't recover it, or wastage in as much as a staff member comes into the room whilst they're cleaning or otherwise, between guests or during a guest stay, and actually steals the product. Now, a lot of research has been done, and they're saying that probably 75 to 80% of minibar thefts within a hotel are staff orientated.
Wow.
Other than guest orientated. And we're all in the service industry, and I know that when I check out of a hotel and the receptionist says, have you had anything from the minibar? There's that little tweak in the back of your brain that says, oh, what if I just said no? What could they do about it?
Yep.
So all of a sudden the hotel industry, or the food and beverages managers, realized that putting a quality product into their minibar was costing them a lot of money. So they then have two choices. They put the price up to cover the cost of the wastage.
Yep.
Or they downgrade the quality of the product in the minibar.
Right. Okay.
you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Put the price up, the guests don't consume as much, and when you write it off, you're writing off more. Downgrade the quality of the product, and what then happens is you don't make as much revenue because you can't put the price as high, or you haven't got that wow factor of what you've got in your minibar. You've only got a Mars bar and a bottle of water. So there are different thought processes as to how to manage this. But what's happened, going back to where we started, what's happened is the minibars were there. We started stocking them and overstocking them and putting more and more and more into them. The food and beverages managers are now having to spend more time servicing those minibars, more time writing off stock. So eventually it's now gone the other way, where hotels are going, well, actually, I won't put anything in the minibar and we'll rely on room service. Yeah, we'll rely on, if a guest wants something, we'll advertise it's available, but they'll have to pull down or use an app or some other device to request that, that product. But again, go back to me sitting at the end of the bed after a night out with a group of friends. I just want a quick Mars bar and a bottle of water. I don't want to be waiting for housekeeping to deliver it to my room. So again, that whole food and beverages turnover starts dropping off the bottom.
You're right. There is that impulse buy there. And as you said, we've got people looking at moving to minibar on demand. We've got some boutique hotels that have said, let's give away a limited selection of the minibar free. Is there, in your mind, a good way that hotels should go to be able to actually, take the minibar back to a point of being a revenue center where, as you said, back in 1974, I'm sure it was making good money.
Again, there are a couple of different ways of skinning this one, and we're having a technology discussion. So yes, of course, as always, technology rushes to the aid of the dilemma we've got. But it comes down to different procurement routes. So nobody wants to spend a lot of money to put something into a room because it comes out of a certain budget. But having said that, if they spend that money and put the right product in the room, then they can recover that through the revenue of the minibar. So there are solutions out there. There are electronic minibars that actually monitor what's going on within it. Now, they all communicate via a number of different mediums, whether it's Zigbee or Bluetooth or via standard LAN connection. But effectively, the minibar is talking directly to the PMS system. And the moment the guest removes something from the minibar, it gets registered as a transaction and they get billed. Now, there's a lot of pushback from the industry for this technology because people are frightened of it. They think, well, what happens if I pick something up and then I put it back? Am I going to get billed? What happens if I take this bottle of water, drink it, top it back up from the tap and put it back in again? Is it going to be picked up on? The technology is there, built into the way the system works to monitor all of this. It knows if something's been picked up and put back. It knows if something's been picked up and removed. It's even got a lot of intelligence to it. So when you stock a minibar, you may put 4 bottles of VB front to back. But we all know that over a period of time, the one at the back is never going to get used. And so it's going to go out of date. So you're going to have to throw it away. So with a good automatic minibar, when the minibar attendant is doing their refill, it will actually monitor if the back bottle is brought to the front. So effectively, you're filling from the back. And this can be generated as a report. So your food and beverages manager can actually run a refill report and see what's selling, what isn't selling, what is or isn't coming out of stock or coming out of date, as well as being able to manage the actual staffing requirements to maintain the minibars. And I think I mentioned earlier that the average minibar attendant that is a full-time employed minibar attendant can look after about 100 minibars a day. So this is going into the room in the morning, checking to see what's in there, going back in the afternoon, stocking up, because they've obviously got to go to the cellar to recover the relevant bits and pieces and put them back in the room. And then they've got the paperwork to do to actually record this on the front desk, for the front desk to then record it against the guest folio.
Yep.
A automatic minibar, when it's configured and set up correctly and allowed to run, you only need one minibar attendant per 500 rooms.
Wow. Okay.
Because they're very, very targeted on where they go. They know that in rooms 10 to 15, the minibar door hasn't been opened.
Yep.
So why would they need to go there? So that's instantly 10 rooms they haven't got to worry about. And the other rooms, they say, okay, well, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Smith in room 6, he took a bottle of VB. So all I've got to do is take one bottle of VB to that room. I haven't got to worry about anything else. So the actual time spent is halved, or actually more than half. You know, it's reduced considerably. Guest checkout is also a much neater environment.
Yep.
Because when the guest comes to check out, the receptionist doesn't ask, have you had anything from the minibar? They say, here's your bill, and it includes the VB, the can of Coke, and the Mars bar that you had on Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Yep.
You put that to a guest, and they can't stand there with that little tweet in the back of their head saying, I wonder if they'll notice.
Yeah.
Because it's a fact right in front of them.
Interesting.
So if you look at just a minibar, and go all the way back to the beginning, a minibar is really set up for two reasons. One, for guests, so they can have that guest experience,
yep.
And two, as a revenue stream for the hotel. Other than that, why would you have a minibar? So do you put in a cheap and cheerful absorption minibar and put nothing in it? And then the guest experience is nothing apart from if they happen to go to 7-Eleven, they can put their, their drinks in it.
Yep.
There's no reason to having it. Do you then go for a better quality minibar that lasts a little bit longer, that you start stocking with some products that are impulse buys, but are done at the same retail price that you get at 7-Eleven? 2 bottles of water for $3.50. Why would I go to 7-Eleven when I can get it out of my room? And I'm not going to feel quite so bad, because I know if I go to 7-Eleven, I get the same rate.
Yep.
So you get that revenue stream back, or you bite the bullet and you say, well, actually, I'm going to go for a proper automated minibar system, and I can now offer my guests a good range of products that I'm not going to be effectively throwing away, and I can recover the revenue that I'm trying to get out of the minibar, which we've lost because of all the reasons we talked about earlier.
Yep. That is extremely interesting. So with an automated fridge, minibar, I need to learn. With an automated minibar, is there an ideal size hotel where that becomes cost effective? Is it, if I had 80 rooms, it's probably, is my property too small? If I've got 200, it's just perfect. If I've got 500, it's brilliant. As you said, I only need one employee now.
It's very much scalable. We have properties in Australia that are less than 80 rooms.
Wow. Okay.
That have a minibar systems, and they've had it for many, many years. And they absolutely love it because they trust it.
Yep.
And they go, look, I haven't got to employ extra staff. My housekeepers, I can actually give them exactly what they need in the morning to go into the rooms, and I don't get the guests. And so, it's not a boutique high range hotel. These are, I hope you don't mind me giving the brand, but it's a Best Western. It's a standard Best Western property, which is very, very service orientated. You stay there, you want to have a good night's sleep, you want to have a couple of drinks, you want to leave.
Yep.
Easy. In the same vein as we also have some very high-end customers, where it's specifically where we're getting into the resorts and the casinos of this world.
Yeah.
Where they've got those high rollers and they can put in some
premium
products. Yeah, premium products, thank you. And they've got a lot of rooms to service.
Yep.
So you've got the manpower savings. But in answer to your question, no, there is not one size that really suits an automatic minibar solution. If it's done well and it's actually pushed as a revenue stream for the hotel, any size property will benefit. And the ROI is very, very good.
Probably going back 10, 12 years ago, that there was concern from the guest point of view. You know, what if I pick up this bottle of wine and I hold it for 15 seconds and put it back? Do I automatically get charged? But a lot has changed from the technology point of view in that time frame.
Yeah, look, it's what we call a momentary pickup. So you pick something up and you put it back. Now, effectively, you set, as a hotel operator, you say, well, I'll give 10 seconds as a momentary pickup. Pick it up, have a look at it, go, I'm not interested, put it back. Doesn't get billed to the room, but notifies the minibar attendant to go and check to make sure that it hasn't been pilfered with, you know, cat broken and tea put in rather than whiskey. Happens. Yep. After 10 seconds, it's actually classed as a transaction. Okay, so it automatically gets billed to the guest portfolio through the PMS interface. Now, that only really comes to effect when the guest checks out.
Yep.
So if the guest is staying for 2 or 3 days, the minibar attendant knows to go back to that room and can actually see if something's been transactions happened. So you're only really going to get that scenario where the guest checks out and they're billed for something that they haven't actually consumed if it's happened between when it was last refilled and when the guest checks out, which is invariably a fairly short period of time. So again, it's understanding the system and understanding the psychology of how people work that it really isn't as big a problem as people make out. We're all in the service industry, and we all know that the guest is king. And even with an automatic minibar system, when the guest checks out, if there is a dispute at checkout, then the hotel will of course side on the side of the guest.
Yeah.
And you will have to write off some product. The thing being is we're not eliminating it, we're just reducing it, and we're reducing it considerably. There have been hotels where if you actually sit down a food and beverages manager, take him away from the general manager and say, how much are you actually writing off? It'll be probably between 30 and 40% of their stock in a non-automatic minibar environment.
Yep.
Ask that same food and beverages manager once they've got a fully automated system in place, yep, and they've reduced that to probably 1 to 5%.
Wow. Okay.
It makes that much difference.
Yep.
Now, the food and beverages manager will never say that in front of the GM, which is always a problem for us. But in realistic terms, we've got lots of information from around the world where our solution's been installed. A large gaming casino, 5,000 rooms, all running an intelligent minibar, then you'll see where these, where these cost savings really can come to the fruition, and the ROIs show themselves very quickly.
That's really interesting, Daryl. Is there anything else we need to know about minibars?
Look, I'm your worst case scenario salesman. I've been in the industry for 20, 25 years. So yes, I could go on for hours and hours about door seals, door thickness, and different shelf configurations. But I think we've covered the main parts of what I would like, with your assistance, really just to get across. And that's the technology from absorption to compressor, the pros and the cons of both. And don't allow money necessarily, or the cost of purchase necessarily to guide the decision.
Yeah.
Because as an operator, you've got that long-term consideration. So absorption and compressor, I look after both. We sell both into the market, but there really is no good reason to buy absorption other than if you're on a very, very, very tight budget, or you are incredibly paranoid about potential sound. But I've already mentioned the reasons why compressor, if you go for a good compressor, won't be an issue.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, as I say, you're then talking into actually having intelligent minibars. The cost in comparison is probably 3 to 4 times the cost.
Yep.
So it turns a lot of people off almost immediately.
Yeah.
But that is a cost that you can recover through your food and beverages, i.e., your revenue on the rooms, very, very, very quickly. Yeah, so much so as a company, we actually offer a revenue share solution. So if you want to, you can have a minibar completely free of charge.
You beat me to it. I was going to say, is there an option for the hotel basically to lease or not have to take on the fridge as a capital investment?
Yeah, we realise that there's a capex value when somebody's talking a large, sort of three digits for a minibar seems an awful lot.
Yep.
So we enter into effectively a leasing solution or a revenue share solution. Yep. So over 3 years or 5 years, we will take a little clip out of each minibar. Where we have done this, and we've done it a couple of properties around Australia, normally we get bought out within the first 12 months, because once it's set up, the actual hotel operator realizes that they're going to end up paying over 3 or 5 years considerably more to us than they would have done if they just buy it outright. And so they're effectively missing out on that revenue.
But that gives them the opportunity, as you said, over that period to dip their toe in the water, so to speak, and see the results, and then actually come back to you and say, you know what, we would like to just buy that out now.
You have to trust it, you have to believe in it, and you have to actually have a good, and the systems that have gone in that have worked really, really well are ones where the food and beverages manager have really bought into it.
Of course. And
they've been able to come up with all sorts of things. So we've got one property where they do specials, and it's automatic in the minibar that when you buy gin with tonic, the tonic's half price. If you buy gin and tonic separately, they're full price. The first local beer purchased out of the minibar is half price. So you can change the logic in the software to offer all sorts of weird and wonderful things, not have to worry about repricing it, not have to worry about reprinting a menu. You can just advertise, okay, you're a VIP guest, therefore day one, your minibar is completely complimentary. And there is another sideline to that. Because the minibars also have locks on them, if you're checking in, you can actually choose to have your minibars locked.
Yep.
So we actually had one hotel that had an NRL team staying, and it was requested that all the minibars were locked at check-in so that they couldn't go overboard. And again, this is just down to the hotel operation to say, well, husband and wife in one room, children in the next room, would you like us to lock the children's minibar?
And that is perfect, because I remember when I was in hotels, we would have to, destock the minibar and then, pop it all in a box and put the room number on it, and then make a note that when the guest had actually checked out to restock the minibar.
Yep. And this is all dealt with using technology, using very, very simple logic and software that's tried and tested globally. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just trying to highlight to the industry what is now achievable to get over a lot of these operational issues.
Daryl, thank you so much. I have learnt so much about minibars today. I really appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me.